Hello everyone and welcome to The Knowledge, the racing TV show which focuses on our UK major festivals. Now this edition is centred around 2-year-olds, and that is with this weekend Newmarket hosting the Dubai Future Champions Festival on Friday and Saturday. And we've also thrown in the key races for older horses too as bonus material. And once again we have gathered a team of experts together to guide you through step by step everything you need to know about the key races this weekend. So first things first, let's get to know the track a little bit better. Newmarket track facts on the Rolling Mile. The Cesarewitch course is 2.5 miles long. It has one right-handed turn at halfway. Races of 10 furlongs and shorter are conducted in the straight, and that is the longest straight in Britain. It's an expansive setting, frequently intimidating for inexperienced horses. It's a wide, galloping track and it has a stiff uphill finish. And the ability to handle the famous dip, an uneven descent from 2 furlongs out, is essential. Now, how do races at Newmarket tend to develop? Well, messily, often with several subgroups emerging, even in small fields. Certainly saw that the last time we raced there. It favours prominent racers, especially when there is a tailwind, but fortunes can change in the dip when many horses become unbalanced. And during the rising final furlong, which places emphasis on stamina, the rail track biases, real or perceived, can fundamentally alter how and where a race is run. So there's lots to take into account at the Rolling Mile. That is just how wide it is, and the undulations there are for all to see, particularly when you get stuck into the dip. And I think the other interesting point about racing there this weekend is that, as is not always the case with this meeting, the stalls are going to be positioned in the centre. Right, let's get on with the race previews then. The feature race this weekend for the Colts, the Dewhurst, that's where we start. Right, the Darley Dewhurst then, the feature of the weekend. Over the 7 for the 2-year-old Colts. Delighted to say Lydia Hislop is alongside. A semi-change of position for you in the Knowledge.
Absolutely, I'm being played out of position, I think.
But very accurate still in that position.
Well, we'll see.
We will.
The proof will be in the tasting of the pudding.
What do you make of the Dewhurst each and every year? What is the significance of the race?
It tends to be the king-making race for 2-year-olds. It tends to throw up the 2-year-old that will be the champion, certainly in Europe, as a result of it. Slightly unusual situation this time round, bit reminiscent of Pinatubo, who's also with Godolphin, in that Native Trail goes into the race £7 clear of his rivals. Yeah. Nonetheless, there are some interesting horses up against him.
Yeah, absolutely. There seems to be some real depth to the race this year. We'll get into that, but we've talked about the significance of the race. Well, it is a Group 1 for the juveniles over the 7 furlongs. It was established in 1875, Britain's most prestigious 2-year-old contest, and usually the best in Europe too. It often decides the champion, as Lydia has said. The champion 2-year-old, that is, and supplies next year's 2,000 guineas anti-post favourite. That is often the case. And where next? Well, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and obviously the 2,000 guineas as well. That's the significance of the Darley Dewhurst Stakes. And accolades over the years for the Darley Dewhurst. Leading jockey, 10 wins, Lester Piggott, 1956 to 1982. Go back further for leading trainer, 8 wins, John Porter, 1884 to 1898. And Frank Butters, 27 to 46. Leading owner, with 8 wins, His Highness the Aga Khan III, 1923 to 1946. Now, much more recently for the fastest winning time, that was US Navy Flag in 2017. Up the rail, 122.37. Unconfirmed whether that was the plan on the day or not, though, Lydia. Best we still don't know.
Absolutely don't.
Best European 2-year-old figures to date. Now, help me out with this if you can, Lydia. So first of all, Native Trail 122, as you say, is £7 clear.
Yeah.
Where exactly are these figures from? And if you can touch on the tenebrism asterisk as well, please.
Well, they're mostly the domestic handicappers figure. So if it's a British-based horse, it'll be the British handicappers figure. If it's an Irish-based horse, it'll be supplied by the Irish handicapper, ditto for the French handicapper. The exception actually is Native Trail. The English handicapper has, who's Graham Smith for the 2-year-olds, has him on 122. The French and the Irish, as I understand it, have him on 121. So that is something that is going to have to be wrestled in mud over sometime around the sort of December period when they decide, they have to agree across the world as to what numbers they're going to give the horses that are basically listed level and upwards. So we'll see whether it's 122. It's probably to do with the poundage scale. Strangely enough, all 3 handicappers have the second in the National Stakes on the same figure. But the poundage scale for Britain makes it 122. This is what I mean about it being reminiscent of Pinatubo, who went into the Dewhurst on 128, and he already had got the most impressive figure, and he didn't better that. In fact, he didn't run up to it in the Dewhurst that time out. But you mentioned Tenebris and the Cheveley Park winner. That has an asterisk because the rating hasn't yet been published. It was only her second start. It's a performance figure produced by the Irish handicapper, but it's one with which 115 that Graham Smith agrees.
So until a third start, she can't have an official figure.
I'm not sure how it works over in Ireland, but
because you'd think after a Group 1 success that it would just be bang, there is the figure. But
I don't think it's the point being that because Ireland and Britain agree on that, yes, I don't think there's going to be any wrangling. Yeah,
I see. Gotcha. There is another page on that, which incidentally we can visit a little bit later on in the show. But we are going to get stuck into the Dewhurst Stakes. So no, we're not going to give you betting just as yet. Bayside Boy, David Egan, Berkshire Shadow, Ashim Murphy, Dabab, Frankie Dettori, Dubawi Legend, Agloon Thorn, Go Bears Go, Native Trail, who officially does head the betting, and the straight answer is the Mount of Colin Keane for Jer Lyons. Right, let's start with Native Trail. We've touched on that National Stakes performance. This was the downing of the colours of Point Lonsdale. What about this performance suggests that he's tailor-made for a Dewhurst, do you think, Lydia?
Well, I think he's grown up quite a bit. Charlie Appleby said, as a result of this, the previous run, where he'd been a bit too keen in the superlative, that they changed the equipment. Specifically, he mentioned they put on cross noseband. You can still see some signs of babyishness. He's inclined to hang in behind Point Lonsdale when he's first asked to go and win his race by William Buick there. But then, when he's asked to concentrate, he really is very impressive, and it suggests a horse that is very much growing up. And this was such a strong race, because coming into this, Point Lonsdale had improved for every start. Last time out, he'd won the Group 2 Futurity. There's Ebro River over on the inside rail. He'd come into this winning the Phoenix Stakes Group 1. And he just seems to be on the right trajectory, and also the right trajectory mentally. The Dewhurst was pinpointed as the target after this success, with Charlie Appleby saying that the Breeders' Cup might be just a bit too much for his mind, this horse's mind at this stage in his career. So it's a horse that they're minding, a horse that they're bringing on both physically and mentally.
Track happy with the Rolling Mile for him, do you think?
Don't know.
A July course?
Yeah, it's a July course. I tend to think that the Rolling Mile is a lot trickier, a bit more uneven in terms of the descent than the July course. I don't think they necessarily translate as you might expect them to, but I don't have any reason to think that he won't.
Okay. And at this point, just want to touch on, if we can, just generically the fact that the stalls are in the centre, whereas we don't often see that at this meeting. Do you think that could, or why does that make perhaps the races a little bit more interesting? Well,
I mean, it's going to come down to where the jockeys are going. By the time we get to the Dewhurst, it's pretty much probably going to be set in stone, because we've had all of the previous Friday. Everyone will have had a very good look at the track and maybe explored different elements of it. But we see quite often that there is an advantage to bagging a rail. It can result, you mentioned at the start of the show, in dissatisfactory races where horses, even in small fields, end up racing in more than one group. So it can have an actual effect on the outcome of the race. In Native Trail's case, he's in 5. So, and I would imagine that William Buick will want to get him some cover. So I can't see him making the decision. I can see him more following the decision that others perhaps make.
Straight answer is on a wing. Will come out of stall number 8 under Colin Keane for Jer Lyons, and is one of the horses stepping up in trip, Lydia.
Really interesting, because going into this, Jer Lyons was saying that he was thinking of this horse as a 7-8 furlong type. Coming out of it, he was now thinking about the Commonwealth Cup over 6 furlongs next season. He's very impressive. It's very different ground, this, much faster than on his debut when there was some cut. So you wouldn't be worried about what he faces at Newmarket. But he sort of bobbles as he comes into the straight here and just changes his legs. And his response, though, is superb from this point onwards. With when he is asked by Colin Keane to go about and win his race, he comes right away, and this is such an impressive performance. You would think on pedigree, and given what Joe Lyons thought going into this race, that 7 furlongs will be fully within his compass, and this is the kind of horse that we don't really have a total handle on about where he is precisely. I think he's won 110 this performance figure. I think I'm right in saying that. But obviously he hasn't run into the kind of competition that has allowed Native Trail to establish himself on 1-2-2.
Would it concern you that he's drawn on a wing, given the enthusiasm with which he raced there over 6?
Potentially, yes. I suppose at least there are some, with Newmarket being wide open and the stalls being in the centre though, it does give some options, doesn't it, in terms of if you want to drop back and get some cover, if that's what you would like to do over 7.
Now, Go Bears Go has stepped up successfully from a win at 5 to a win over 6, as last seen behind Perfect Power in the middle park, and is now having a go over 7, Lydia. What didn't work out on this occasion for him?
Well, this is a race in which they all finished in much of a muchness, really. Perfect Power ended up being on top. Up front, Go Bears Go had bounced out in the centre of the track. Then he was taken on by Twilight Jet, who showed plenty of pace coming over to this near side rail. And you'll see that he starts to edge left a little bit under pressure. When the race accelerates at this point, he just flags for a moment, but he does rally inside the final furlong, and he finishes off quite strongly. And as I mentioned, they're in a heap. Going into this, I don't know whether I'd have been convinced that 7 furlongs would have been his thing, but on the basis of this, I think there's some encouragement, and there is enough encouragement on his pedigree as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm even more enthused just watching it back again, just that what he found on the rising ground at the finish.
It's just that it's also that much of a muchness. I mean, I know it's a Group 1 much of a muchness, but you're talking about 2 horses that have really stamped their authority, one in a Group 1 that he is coming up against. So he's got pounds to find.
Right, Berkshire Shadow has a tongue tie on for the first time here and is having another go, Lydia, over the 7, having run at York over the 6 last time. And this effort, which has been franked by the winner, Angel Bleu in the Vintage.
Yes, Angel Bleu, who's on the outside there of Berkshire Shadow, the lighter coloured horse, has gone on to win the Jean-Luc Lagardère Group 1 on Arc Day, like some cut in the ground. Berkshire Shadow has encountered all types of ground, so you wouldn't think that would be a concern, but you can see that he's readily outpaced in these conditions compared with Angel Bleu, but then sticks up to his task really nicely. You would think that the rising final furlong is going to suit him, something that puts an extra accent on stamina, because from the moment he won the Coventry, he then started shaping like a horse that did want a bit further. But I still think he's got quite a bit to find on the leaders in this particular race.
All the more interesting, that, even watching that back again, that they then went back to 6, I think.
To me, it was 7 furlongs and even a mile, but
yes.
The final furlong should help.
So I think consensus being that stepping back to 7 is going to be a plus. That's Berkshire Shadow. What about Irish Raider, Gluanthane? Have I got that right?
I don't know. I mean, I've gone with Glowntorn.
Yes,
but
I'm going to go with that. Glowntorn.
Okay, well, I'm feeling just as shaky about that as you, I have to say. We haven't seen this horse since April. This is him winning at the Curragh over 6 furlongs, beating Castle Star. So that's a good scalp to take. He went on to win the Marble Hill and was recently second in the Middle Park. We've just seen that. You would think that this horse will definitely get 7 furlongs. He's got a Vertum Futurity entry. He's got an entry in the Irish Guineas already next season. And he does well here. I mean, he's ridden along from quite a way out inside the final furlong, and he repels all raiders. And obviously we've seen Aidan O'Brien bring Tenebrism from having last raced in March or April and then coming and winning the Middle Park. So
yes.
You're not going to see it as a negative.
I was going to say that if this was 3 weeks ago, I think it was a negative 6 months off trying to win a Group 1. But hey, maybe it's not. Interesting that would seem certainly not by design, given how Aidan normally campaigns them. Well,
certainly in the case of Tenebrism, it wasn't. It'll be interesting to find out what was the issue of keeping Glantorn off the track as well, which had a setback.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see the reason for the absence there with Glantorn. Right, the race, the Dewhurst. Simple, really.
Yeah, we should mention Bayside Boy as well, I reckon, who Roger Varian and David Egan teaming up, winner of the Forerunner Champagne Stakes, the race for which Reach for the Moon was all the rage, but had to lead into a headwind and had Twilight Jet pestering him in the early stages, and just wondering whether Bayside Boy was able to whether Reach the Moon had been slightly softened up, basically, and Bayside Boy was able to pick him up. But nonetheless, it was a good run, and he's progressed with every start.
Is he slightly underestimated here, do you think?
Possibly. But Native Trail does look very good. I just like the way he went through that Group 1 race, dismissing horses that are Group 1 performers with a large amount of authority. And he seems to be improving mentally, and I can see I think he's the rightful favourite.
Yes, I suppose the decision on the day is whether or not he's the rightful price at odds on, and how strong he is, etc. And working on good to soft ground.
I think so, because if you look at the force, we're good to soft at the time of recording. There doesn't seem to be any significant rain between now and Saturday, so that, I think we'll be talking about this kind of thing.
Okay. Autumn Stakes. Right, let's have a look at who's declared for the Autumn Stakes then. We've got Acal, we've got Alflela, we've got Corobus. Yes, Dirty Old Town, Dubai Pert, Green Team, Imperial Fighter, Mr. Professor, Scriptwriter, Attacker Bay and United Nations. I'm just really excited to see Corobus again.
I think everybody is.
Yeah. Are you of the opinion that a potentially top-class horse can still, in their career, when you look back, get away with doing something like this?
Yes, I think so. I think...
that is not winning a race from the position he was in.
Yes, I mean, it's still in my mind about whether actually, I mean, and his pedigree would definitely not say this, just the distance he was able to put between him and his rivals here, whether he might be a quicker horse than his pedigree suggests. But I think, given his time again, William Buick would have held on a little bit longer. They did get racing quite a long way out, and he's just flailing a little bit in the final furlong.
He made the point, William Buick, didn't he, that he didn't expect that response when he asked him. So he didn't expect the turn of foot and the speed that he showed.
No. Well, it's going to be very interesting. And the other interesting thing that has happened since, I know that Charlie Appleby was talking to Nick Luck on his podcast, and he wouldn't necessarily say that Corobus was a lesser horse than Native Trail. Native Trail is rated 1-2 and is an authoritative Group 1 winner, and Corobus has just been beaten in a Group 2.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's because of the way he views the horses for the future. I wonder if he sees Native Trail perhaps more as a 2-year-old and Corobus more as the unfurnished horse for next year.
Quite possibly. I mean, he looks very exciting, doesn't he? I mean, everybody was really impressed with the way that Royal Patronage stuck to his task in that race, but the excitement, the flash of brilliance in the race was definitely Corobus.
Yeah, so Corobus very, very interesting, very exciting. Imperial Fighter we can have a look at next. Imperial Fighter who... on this occasion, well, I'm not quite sure what to make of this race, because it looked as though a lot of them disappointed on the day, but then, well, we know what the winner did subsequently. So is this form now worth its salt, do you think?
Well, I think the winner is a very good horse, and he's a gritty horse, and none of the others were able to even land a blow. And if you take a look at Imperial Fighter, he's trying to get involved, but he just can't, and he's no threat whatsoever, whereas Corobus left this same horse for dead at one point in the Royal Lodge and then got worn down by him. I'm prepared to take this really on face value, that Royal Patronage is comfortably a more superior horse to Imperial Fighter, and therefore Imperial Fighter's got quite a bit to do.
With Corobus, who, as you say, left him for whatever.
Yeah.
Dubai Poets, let's have a look at this horse, who we can see in action winning when penalised on this occasion. This is obviously a step up, Lydia, and this was the Sir David CVBF Novice Stakes. What did you make of the level of this form, trying to translate it to the contest on Saturday?
Well, obviously he's got to step right up. He's facing horses that have already been racing in pattern class, but this was a big improvement on his debut. He had to be chased along in order to challenge, but the whip only needed to be waved at him and then just used once for him to come right away. And in the end, he's a very authoritative winner. He shapes as though moving up by a furlong in trip is really going to suit him, even though the dam was quite speedy. You'd think he's going to handle the ground, but this is just a much bigger test. I mean, this is much shallower waters than the ones that he's facing.
So I'm quite taken by the distance he's put between himself and the rest, but also it's worth noting everything was pretty strung out.
Yes.
So Was he sort of as good as the victory merited, do you think?
We don't know just yet, but I think he looks exciting. He's obviously got quite a large amount of ability. We're going to know better where he can be pegged in terms of the rankings after this.
Aidan O'Brien's charge is scriptwriter, and he's got a few in the race. And scriptwriter on this occasion winning, and it looks like the leading charge from Aidan O'Brien. This is Gorham Park. Again, a big step up needed here.
Yes, Shamie Heffernan will again be on board. After he got off this horse when winning at Gorham Park, he said that he felt that a mile was about the minimum for him, and you can see that he needs all of it really to get on top, and needs his mind being made up. He needs to concentrate. I'm sure he'll improve mentally for this performance, but he was one that was in the Zetland, and looking at this race I kind of expected him to turn up there rather than the Autumn, but maybe he's sharpened up since we've last saw him. The stable companion United Nations is the mount of Ryan Moore. He'll be quite interesting as well because he won at Nace on his only start.
Does that then tell us that he would be the leading candidate for...
Well, good question. So sometimes, I mean, we're talking about 2-year-olds, so, it's very hard to have a definitive opinion, and we've seen that Ryan Moore's been on the wrong side of that decision a few times.
Yes, and perhaps because Shamie rode that horse last time, they're keeping that partnership together.
There's all
you don't
sorts
quite
of
know.
reasons.
How difficult do you find it to peg Aidan's horses for this meeting, and in particular not in the Group 1s?
Incredibly difficult,
yes.
I think. I mean, generally with 2-year-old racing, I like to watch and not get involved because things can change so quickly. Horses can take steps forwards and backwards very quickly at this time in their career. There's so little to go on, but they're great for next year, to be poured over for this time next year.
I think it's hard. The fact that Ryan Moore rode US Navy flag, I think, to beat Mendelssohn in this a few years ago, and then look at I think it's really hard to see exactly
how the race is going to pan out. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, that's Dewhurst wise.
You were talking about the draw as well.
Yes.
What do you think about this race? Because Caribus is on the outside in 11, and Imperial Fighter is on the other extreme in 1.
I still think that there will be. Well, look, it depends on what's happened the previous day, but I still think that it's likely we're going to see, certainly early on the Friday, that riders are trying to get to a rail, if it's not too far for them to go. If you're dealing with a race, sort of 6 to 8 runners, maybe that's a little bit harder. But I think you're close enough here, particularly if you're in double figures, to get to a rail, and that tends to be a benefit, doesn't it? So I don't know is the answer. Ideally, I wouldn't pick it for Caribus. I think that surely William Buick will try and just get him a bit of cover for a little bit longer. Surely,
exactly.
He's not going to want to have it be in front too soon.
It might pan out, depending on where they race, as not the best draw.
I think that, yeah, definitely. You wouldn't pick it.
But it's hard to say that right now.
Yeah, because we don't know what's going to happen in the previous day or so. Exactly. Right. Good stuff. That's a look at some of the featured juvenile races for the Colts on Saturday.
Jump away for the Darley Dewhurst Stakes. Tendolkar just a little bit slow out of the gate, restrained early on. Shah Jahan, one of the O'Brien 4, bounds into an early lead from Rock of Gibraltar, is pulling quite hard in the red and white jacket, comfy on the right. Towards the left is Prince Tulim in a red jacket, followed in yellow by Parasol. And then Lanzia from Where or When out the back with Tendolkar. Through the first furlong and a half, Shah Jahan and Prince Tulim up front. Rock of Gibraltar hasn't settled at all in third place, throwing his head around under Mick Cannan, taking a fierce grip. Parasol out wide, comfy on the fence, then Lanzia, Where or When, and Tendolkar is last of the 8. Down to the halfway stage, Shah Jahan on the near side still with Prince Tulim, the 2 outsiders, the big guns in their wake. Rock of Gibraltar out wide, Parasol, then Comfy with Lanzia, Where or When, and Tendolkar just nudged along now in last place. They head for the final quarter mile, and still Shah Jahan, but now Lanzia unleashing a run on the outside. Parasol in the yellow. Rock of Gibraltar just a bit held up, a bit squeezed for room at the moment. He's going to have to find a way through. Mick Cannan having to sit and suffer there, and meanwhile Lanzia is making the best of his way home into the dip. A furlong to go. Lanzia, Rock of Gibraltar now into the clear in the red and white jacket, trying to reel back his stablemate. Where or When is next, out wide Tendolkar. Rock of Gibraltar cutting down Lanzia. Rock of Gibraltar from Lanzia. Tendolkar flying. Lanzia fights back. Bobber very close for the Dewhurst, with Lanzia on the near side of Rock of Gibraltar and Tendolkar. A 1-2-3 for O'Brien, but who's won it? It's very close indeed. Lanzier was rallying in the last few strides on the near side. Rock of Gibraltar certainly went ahead up. He did extremely well to get out of trouble. And here we'll have to bring the line in. It could be Lanzier, but we await the verdict of the judge here. Tendolkar third, that's for sure. He picked up very well indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of our first Group 1 race this afternoon, the Darley Stakes, by the narrowest of margins. What a brave performance. Rock of Gibraltar, owned in partnership by Stanley and Mr. John Macchia, trained by Ed O'Brien, ridden by Mick Kinnan.
Right, as we look to the older horses now, we're going to cover the Challenge Stakes, the Pride Stakes and Saturday's Darley Stakes, starting with the Challenge. Can say a hello to Fran Berry. Fran, welcome along to the Knowledge. Fran, how do you see this track from your jockey's experience? Is it a front-runner's track, a track where it's hard to make up ground traditionally?
I definitely think so, Tom. I think it pays to be prominent on the Rolling Mile, and particularly in the evidence we've seen in the last couple of weeks there, the pace and getting towards that stand-side rail. Now we're switching tracks for this meeting. We'll be right under the stands rail. Maybe that'll change things a little bit, but for me, prominent racers at Newmarket are favoured. The forecast looks fair, so we'll be working off good soft ground.
Yeah, and I think wind on the day is going to be key, just in case there is a headwind that as we know, can change things a little bit. But if there's a tailwind, certainly favours those on the front end. Right, let's get stuck into the Godolphin Stud and Stable Staff Awards Challenge Stakes. This the 3 o'clock on Friday over 7 furlongs. Let's touch on the betting first of all. A couple of Godolphin horses at the top of it. Alistar Hale is 3-1. The Mount of William Buick, Dubai. Also for Charlie Appleby, James Doyle 4-1. Chindit 4-1. With Thanks 6-1. Horoscope 6-1. 7-1, sorry. Double or Bubble 7-1 nines, and Bigger the remainder. First thing we're going to look at is Dubai, with also Alistar Hale and With Thanks in there. This is from Newbury. We've just highlighted With Thanks there, Fran, on the outside of the field. Third is Alistar Hale, just tracking the pace. Dubai ends up finishing second. I actually want to start with Alistar Hale because I think he's a horse, Fran, who promises a lot often. But why do you think he perhaps didn't show his best on this occasion?
I think it was day that the pace held up and potentially Silent Escape as a horse on a real upgrade. He dominated the race from a long way out, and the rest of the field never really got him. Dubai finishing off well, and also well making late enough ground after being keen, Tom. He said he had 4 runs since being gelded. Maybe he's getting the hang of things now. I'm not sure whether he might be more suited by racing around a bend, but Friday will tell us a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, he was electric at Haydock in a small field on quick ground time-wise, but again, perhaps not up to his best on this occasion. What does Dubai want to be seen to best effect, do you think?
Dubai needs everything to fall his way. I think he needs a strong gallop where the race begins to fall apart, and if it does, he could well pick up the pieces. He's had a couple of runs on the Rolling Mile. He's actually third to Lamato in this race in 2018, and he's a horse that if he's on song, things can fall his way, but he just tends to find 1 or 2 too good.
Does it concern you, Fran, if a horse like Dubai has had a few goes at this track and perhaps hasn't always been seen to best effect at this track? Does it fit into very much a horses for courses track, do you think?
I think it very much does, and when you get to the age of 7, like Dubai now, you look at his runs and most of his better recent form. Okay, he's won the July course, but he definitely seems to be like his ownership companion, Alistar Hale, suited by running around a bend. For me, suits his style of racing slightly better.
Right, Chindit was 5th in the Guineas. He then followed that up by finishing 5th in the St James's Palace. He then followed that up by finishing 5th in the Jacqueline Marwa, and then 4th in the Celebration Mile when last seen. He's officially rated 113. We can see that run in the Celebration Mile. Is it fair to say he hasn't quite lived up to expectation, Fran?
I think he's getting there. I think I know he had a big reputation last year. He came up short in the Dewhurst Pine, St Mark's Basilica. He was the leading UK challenger on the day, if you like. And look, he started off the year very well at Newbury. He didn't run too badly at all over a mile. in both Royal Ascot and the Guineas. Deauville as well, not a bad run. And for me, dropping down to 7 furlongs is very interesting with Chindit. Didn't have to run to the race in Goodwood for my money. He ran up the back of a few down the rail, as can have happened there on that track, and had to be switched out. And he was the best finisher at the line. And Ben Battle, of course, back in second, Frank is a form, and he beat Pogo, who was third in this race at Goodwood.
It's interesting because he's a horse that I initially looked at this season, Fran, and thought, oh, it'd be interesting when he goes perhaps over further. Here they are dropping back to 7. You think that's a plus?
I do. I think a fast run 7 could really play to his strengths. Still trying to get a handle on Wootton Bassett as a sire where he fits in as regards distance. He's going to be really interesting in the next couple of years when he gets more horse on the ground. But he is out of an Oasis Dream Mare. But I think that cruising speed at 7 and getting him half behind the bridle would suit him better than stretching him out possibly.
Now, Horoscope lining up for Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore will come out of stall number 9. Was last seen in the Boomerang when a keeping on 3rd. What about this contest might suit?
I think he's a horse really on the upgrade, Tom. I think he's been a slow burner, typical of some of Aidan O'Brien's, and he's been highly enough tried on 1 or 2 occasions, getting beat in handicaps. But he got beaten in a handicap on Irish Guineas weekend. Visualisation, who won that, is a high-class horse now. He's a stakes winner. And he beat a very good horse, Gerlines, in Mason at Killarney on his second last start. And I think a fast run 7 could play to his strengths. He ran extremely well behind Real Appeal and Fev Rover and Nord to stay on best down the outside in Leopardstown and Irish Champions weekend. Dropping back the following trip, he'll need a bit of pace on, but he's relatively unexposed. I actually wouldn't mind seeing a bit more rain for him over the distance, albeit.
Yeah, perhaps just to make it a bit more of a test. You've talked lots about if it's a fast run 7. What do we think pace-wise, just looking at the race, Fran?
Not a lot of pace on in paper. With Tanks, was very keen as well, and a couple of times, and took her time in Ascot. Double or Bubble is potentially one that could go forward, but say 5, it kind of comes back to him if they revert to some of the tactics that used to see him at best effect, like around Chester and that, when he made all to win 3 starts ago. He is probably the pace angle out of stall 1.
Who do you like, Fran, if you had to nail you down to a selection?
I think Chindit, based on a run I've seen the last day, given he's handled the Rolling Mile on a couple of occasions, particularly that run in the Guineas, down to 7 furlongs, he's the horse with more potential to upgrade himself than a lot of these.
3-year-old Chindit in the Challenge Stakes. We move on to the last race of the day, and that is the Pride Stakes. Can have a look at the betting for this now. This is the 440 contest. These are the decks, in fact. 4 at David Egan, Freya, Ben Curtis, Lights On, Selene Liliette, Ad Infinitum, April Showers, Aurea, Climate, La Joconde, Lilac Road, Ocean Road, Saida, Soft Whisper, Sweet Believer, Ville de Grace. So we've got a field of 15 for this contest over the 10. La Joconde, well, she ran in the Oaks, of course, didn't she, at 40 to 1. She has subsequently won. She won at Roscommon. She was last seen at Longchamp 26 days ago, finishing in behind Tayona. Prior to that, had run at York, which we can have a look at now when finishing 3rd. This was, of course, in behind Snowfall when well beaten, and she tried to dominate, or she set the pace, I should say, this day. Do you think they'll try and do a similar thing here, Fran?
Definitely down in Trip, and I suppose La Joconde is more famous for what happened post-race in Longchamp when she was a perceived pacemaker for Snowfall, and that didn't go to plan, but she still ran a good race, getting an easy lead on that occasion. Won't get an easy lead here today, Tom, I'd feel, and I think she's a lot more on her plate. She only fell in the maiden or Roscommon. She has run some good races from the front, and maybe if Newmarket is playing that way, that leaders are, and the pace is holding up, I just think she's at a level where she's limited and vulnerable to improvers.
There she is, finishing 3rd and going forward in the Yorkshire Oaks. Soft Whisper, Fran, I think is particularly interesting because of that performance when last seen back in the UK. She was campaigned as a dirt filly out in Dubai, and she won on that surface, but she was good on the quick ground back at Newmarket last time on the 24th of September.
She was, and very impressive for my money, and very strong at the line, having made all Frankie Dettori back in the Blue Silks for Saeed bin Sarur, and also won with a cut in the ground in Pontefract last year, albeit off a mark of 83. She's by Dubawi. I think stepping up to 10 furlongs could bring about further improvement. She is very interesting for me.
Yeah, so she won over the mile on this occasion, as you said. She won over the mile out at Meydan, and then, well, I think it's harsh to say she didn't see it out necessarily in the UAE Derby because she was well beaten. But she sees this out really well as we pick up the closing stages and hits that rising ground and runs on nicely under Frankie Dettori, who's back on board. Stall 15, Fran, of the 15. Do you think that, obviously the stalls are in the centre, but with them right across the track, do you think they'll make use of either rail here?
We're going to have a very good guide by the time we get to Pride Stakes on the last race. We'll have 6 races around the track prior to that, and I think the tone will be set by then, Tom. Obviously, the ground might get more chewed up as the day goes on, but it's very much a watch and brief with the Rolling Mile. I feel whatever sets the tone for the first couple of races, it usually follows through for the latter half of the card.
If you're riding a horse on the straight section of the track, would you rather have a rail to race against? Do you think that is often where the better ground is as opposed to the middle, or not necessarily?
Having a rail is very beneficial if you're making the running. I feel when you're making the running down the middle of a track in the wide open space of Newmarket, you're there to be challenged on both sides of the track, and you're getting forced by the horses that are coming at you. Whereas if you're on a rail, you've only got a horse to challenge one side of you, and you can nearly just sit and let them join you before you have to ask them to go. Whereas if they get a run by you down the middle of the track, it can be harder to gauge. And horses, when they begin to tire, I think the rail is a big benefit to that, particularly on that uphill climb here in the last furlong. Lilac
Road is drawn 11, so 4 away from Soft Whisper. She was in winning form in the Uphaven when last seen, when getting a hold-up ride on that occasion. It's a nice big field for her here, so potential that'll suit her?
Yeah, potentially, and Sieda, number 12, is probably a pace angle dropping down in distance. She's been very good out over 12 furlongs. Maybe went off hard enough behind Forbearance at this track a couple of weeks ago when Forbearance was held up and Sieda was up at the pace in the Royal Stakes, that Group 3 race. She, for me, is very interesting, dropping back down the trip, and I would expect to see her in the firing line most of the way from stall 7.
Would this sort of style of ride potentially at the track, I think you've already covered this, really concern you at all? Do you think Tom Marquand will look to be a little bit more positive on her, given that she's switching to the Rolling Mile?
I think he'll ride her to her strengths, and the fact that work's been held up, it's a race it's a cracking race, and I think it's going to be very competitive. And if the pace has been holding up through the day, there could be a rush on, and you have a mix of horses dropping down in trip, Lodja Cond and Siad dropping down in distance, and a couple stepping up in trip, the likes of Frankie's Mile, Soft Whisper. So it's trying to find that sweet spot between gauging it right for the right trip and not doing too much or too little, I think. And I think Tom Marquand will just be content by his time and hope that they get racing early, I'd say.
Who do you fancy the 15, Fran?
I think it's a really deep race, Tom. It's actually probably one of the races of the weekend for me. I do have a lot of time for Ville de Grace, the Sir Michael Stout trained runner. If you go back to that run in Sandown, she was a ready winner at Yarmouth on her last start listed company. She beat Freya, she beat Sweet Believer on that occasion in great style. And go back to run in Sandown in the Atlanta Stakes behind Saffron Beach, of course, who won last week, winning the Sun Chariot. And Waliak was second. She won a Group 3 in Shanty in good style after that. And for me, Ville de Grace should have been a good second on the day. She had her run through the race and done extremely well to get up late on for second. And she, for me, is the one that's going to improve most. She's a worthy favourite, but a really deep race.
Yeah, for Sir Michael Stout. Just about heading the betting as a check it currently. Let's move on to Saturday, race for the older horses, which is the Darley Stakes. Chance for us to see Barney Roy, which is going to be great. I suppose he's pretty much the star attraction as far as the older horses go on the day. Barney Roy for William Buick. Bedouin Story, Frankie Dettori taking over from Jamie Spencer. Brentford Hope, Pat Dobbs. Jamie Spencer's ridden that horse before as well. Finest Sound, Adrea at Zany, Tyson Fury, Barada, Khartoum King, Vega, Loch Derg, Military Story, and Mostadaf. Let's start with Barney Roy then. Is he just out and out on his day the best of these, Fran?
When he's on song, very much so, and he's still very, very competitive at this level, isn't he? He's very effective. He still retains all his enthusiasm, and I think just bossing this kind of a race suits him very, very well. When he steps it up a notch, he can come up a little bit short. And look, we haven't seen him since June. That would be a little bit of a concern. But if he's on song, he's very much one to beat. Of course, he's only run on the Newmarket track here. He was second to Churchill in the Dewhurst, or the Guinea, should I say, back in 2017.
Yeah, we're having a look at Meydan, Fran, which was a good while ago now when he won back on the 7th of March. This was the Jebel Hatter. I suppose the key is it's the 9 furlongs. We know that suits, although he is a Group 1 winner over the 10 furlongs as well. But do you think a 9 at Newmarket is going to suit him?
He's a horse with a great cruising speed, and he usually travels really well into the race. It will be his minimum distance, but look, he won 1.5 miles in September at Baden-Baden, of course, and he's been very comfortable up in distance. But the speed he showed at Meydan, which is a very fast track over that distance, I think it's within his compass. He would like a bit of an even gallop to tame at, and a little bit of juice in the ground, which good soft, I think, won't be a bad thing for him at this trip.
Bedouin Story is the other Godolphin candidate. He is now the mount of Frankie Dettori after that Cambridgeshire success, which was, Jamie Spencer quite rightly got a lot of plaudits for the ride. I think it's worth pointing out that there were quite a few hold-up performers who were well suited by the headwind on the day and did come from off the pace. But this was him seemingly back to his best. So he's having a go up in grade here, Fran.
He is, and why not? He bounced back to form in the Cambridgeshire Classic Jamie Spencer ride, but high draws on that occasion, Tom, were a big advantage. I'd feel the first Bedouin Story drawn 21, second was installed 22, the third installed 19, and a couple of low drawn horses did get in the mix. Zosimus in 4th place, but for me, there was an element of a horse ridden very well with a track advantage.
Yeah, it seemed to be the case, didn't it, that I think once Tenebrism had come up the standside rail on that day, it seemed as though that might be the side you wanted to be. He picks his way through the field here. That seems to be the way that you're going to have to ride this horse, albeit in a smaller field of just 11 now, Fran.
It is, and I think it's unlocked a new style of racing for him as well, and obviously didn't really relish running around Chelmsford 7 furlongs, up to 9 furlongs last time. Seemed to really suit him as well. We haven't seen him at that trip since Meydan last February when he ran over 10 furlongs, his best run this year prior to the Cambridgeshire. Wouldn't rule it out, Tom, that he could step it up. A horse in form at this time of the year, when some horses are losing their form, is definitely a big plus.
Mustard is fascinating because after his Sandown win, there was a suggestion, or put it this way, they hadn't ruled out a run in the Champion Stakes. But they are going up in trip, which Connections were adamant they would do, but not going right up into the top end company. This was in the Fortune Stakes when they came over to the stands rail, and he was well on top on this occasion.
Yeah, and it looked a good race on the day, and I think this is a horse that is very much work in progress. The fact they've ducked going into Group 1 company this time of the year would suggest that I think it's all about next year for him, and with the dispersal of the Shadwell horses, this is definitely one that will be kept, and you could see him really upgrade his form next year. I think this is a good fit for him. I think stepping up the furlong and trip, once he just relaxes a little bit better. He's a bit strong early on in Sandown, but up in trip, if he relaxes, he's very, very interesting for me.
Yeah, agreed. And actually, he's only rated £4 below Barney Roy, which I sort of had to do a double take on, but he is progressing rapidly. Any others you wanted to mention, Fran, or who's your official selection for the race?
Yes, look, we're still waiting on the Aidan O'Brien declarations for jockeys. Lochderg was a good second on the poly track. I put a line through him on the grass. I don't think he handles it at all. I think he's a real horse that could do well in Saudi Arabia. Khartoum is of interest. 1 or 2 occasions he has pitched up and outran his odds and can often finish off well, but he might be better with a cut in the ground. And Brentford Hope, it doesn't look like the rain will arrive for him, for all that he has a very good course record here.
Barney Roy, the one to beat?
Barney Roy, for me, is a worthy test for the 3-year-old Mustard. I'm excited to see up in trip and up in class.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Fran, thanks very much indeed. Feature races for the older horses done. Fran, thank you. Right, handicap time. The easy ones we say for you, Lydia. Simple. Cesarewitch, first of all. Goodness me. Willie Mullins might win it this year. He's got a few. Withhold is under James Dodd. Then we've got micromanaged Colin Keane, Whiskey Sour Ben Curtis, Live Your Dream, Calling the Wind, Rashun, MC Muldoon, Elysian Phone, The Max We Can, Makawi, Nicholas T, Burning Victory, Rajinsky, Great White Shark again, Buzz. Just the 34, Nate the Great Spanish Kiss, Just Hubert, Scaramanga, Prince Alex, Speedo Boy in 32, Kaili, Platform 19, Mancini, Takarengo for Vera, Supercalonistic, Let Me Be, Gubinator, Margaret Dumont, and Lander Winter, Snowlot, Putting Green, Dance to Paris, Vis-a-Vis, and Electric. Those are the two reserves, incidentally, Vis-a-Vis and Electric. Right, MC Muldoon, Willie Mullins, Ryan Moore, 6 in the race. It's well, he clearly wants to win it, doesn't he? What about this horse, first of all?
Well, obviously Willie Mullins has won the last 3 times and he's got an excellent chance with this horse. We see him here winning at Galway up to 2.5 miles and trip. He'd previously run really well over hurdles at Punchestown in April. In between, of course, he was second to Rashun in the Ascot Stakes, looking really unlucky. He just failed to get up. He didn't get the clearest of runs at a crucial stage. He's only £4 higher for that run. He's unexposed as a stayer and he's got stall 15.
Which is a tick?
Yeah, I think so. It could be much, 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 much worse.
Yes. How important do you think draw is depending on the horse? I.e., can a certain type of horse overcome a very wide draw?
Obviously it can happen, but it's more likely than not that it won't. I mean, generally with Newmarket being able to attain and hold a handy position early on, so if you're using up a lot of fuel early in order to get that position from a wide draw, then you might not have much left at the end of 2 mile 2. So generally, the wisdom is to have a low drawn horse that stays well and can hold a prominent position.
Leading the home charge is another jumps trainer, Nicky Henderson, with Buzz, as Sheen Murphy rides. And I mean, there's always been a lot of buzz, I think, about this horse. What have you made of him over hurdles, and how do you think he's going to translate that back on the level?
Well, he improved last season, undoubtedly, over hurdles. He ran really well, 5th in the Betfair hurdle going into this, and then 2nd behind Abacadabras in this Grade 1 over 2.5 miles. He's unraced on the flat since September 2019 when he ran at Newmarket. He was then trained by Hughie Morrison, who did try him over 14 furlongs, and I was watching the race at York back, and he did seem to sort of crack his stamina, seemed to crack over a furlong out. Now, clearly, he's done all of this over hurdles since. He does like a bit of cut in the ground. He's got stall 6, so there's lots of things in his favour. He's got big handicap form on the flat. He's hardened over jumps. I just wonder about the trip and whether it's an extreme trip on the flat, which is different tempo of race, to a jumps race over 2.5 miles, whether that's what he wants.
Could stall 6 be an inconvenience with that in mind, or you still think it's a plus
I
for him?
I still think you'd want to be on the premises.
Okay. Calling the Wind's been in good form this year.
Yeah.
Or what about this contest might suit or might not?
Little bit concerned about the fact that he ran really poorly on his sole start at the course. He finished last of 6 and clearly didn't handle the dip on that occasion. There was some cut in the ground as well then. Admittedly, that's only one bit of evidence, and there might have been other reasons for that on the day, because he handled Goodwood perfectly well. He proved his stamina there, winning at Goodwood over 2.5 miles. Previously, he'd been second in the Queen Alexandra behind Stratum, but it was actually even a career best over 1.5 miles at Newbury last time out when he finished second. He's got tactical speed, and stamina. He's going to need that from stall 27. With that run at Newmarket, it slightly concerns me.
Yes, the previous course form nodded it, and you wouldn't pick 27, would you, exactly?
You wouldn't, but he's a super horse. He's just improving all the time, and we haven't yet necessarily, I think, seen the summit of his ability. Yeah,
which is something that Richie Hughes said at Goodwood. He was very positive about the horse going forward. Live Your Dream was second in the Cesarewitch trial when last seen. The Cesarewitch trial, not often the best indicator of the winner's.
No, it hasn't been, has it? It hasn't kind of worked in that kind of way. They tried cheek pieces. Simon Sewell put them on for the first time here when he was second behind Turnpike Trip, who'd previously finished second in the Ulster Cesarewitch at Down Royal, and the winner was receiving £22 from the runner-up. Ground might be a bit of a concern. I think the fact that there is no further rain might modify that concern. He did keep trying on this occasion, but he's carried left consistently by the leader, and he's always really held. The first 2 claim well clear. He's got stall 35. I feel like there is enough that's against him.
Yes, I think that's a fair assessment. I take the point about the ground as well. They wouldn't. I don't think further rain would have inconvenienced necessarily looking at him there. So that's Live Your Dream. So I've been through Adam Farrow rides, having a good season, claiming 5. What about the others? Who's the best of the rest for you that we haven't looked at?
I was quite interested in Snow a lot.
Okay.
I thought that this horse is still improving all the time. Obviously, we've got the various Willie Mullins. You mentioned that there are 5 others as well as MC Muldoon. Last year's winner, Great White Shark, from a £10 higher mark. Some of the others have got less good stalls, though. Burning Victory, the Triumph Hurdle winner, is in 25. Whiskey Sour in 16. Micromanaged is all right in 7. So you wouldn't want to be dismissing in a hurry any of those. But I do like MC Muldoon. I know it's obvious.
But Great White Shark was obvious last year.
Yes.
But I'm not even sure £10 is
necessarily enough to stop her.
I don't think. You look at what she did last year and the way particularly she finished off the race. Not a bad draw either, out of 13.
That's right.
Yeah, tough.
It always is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the last time I backed the winner of the Cesaro, which I think is a long time ago.
Really? Well, MC Muldoon, round about 5 to 1, top of the market. Gosh. But you think
the safety of favouritism.
Most likely winner?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Let's turn our attention to the other the feature handicaps, if you like. So on the previous day, Old Rowley Cup, Siskani is 9 to 2, Injazati is 5 to 1, Boltaway 6 to 1, Mashawa 13 to 2, 10 to 1, and bigger the remainder. Nice big field we got for this. We're over the 1.5 miles. Injazati is under James Doyle. There's a 5 to 1 shot currently, just second in the betting currently. And this is Injazati, successful last time. And I suppose this is an obvious step up based upon the performance here over a mile too. The extra couple of furlongs, no problem?
Definitely. I think he shapes as though he will get further. I mean, it's going to be a proper test, this 1.5 miles with the rising finish, and he's got to prove that he's going to enjoy the extra 1.5 miles. But you'd certainly take encouragement from this performance, where he's out in front and he sees off horses, and in the end he's very authoritative on top after coming under some pressure. The pedigree wouldn't be necessarily assured, but this, what you actually see with your eyes, would give you more encouragement. He's also run okay in maiden company or novice company at Newmarket, showing that he can go forward in the dip as well. So I think there's a lot of positives about Injazati. He is a progressive horse, and that was a good performance.
Yeah, for Charlie Fellows and James Doyle. That Injazati, who's second in the betting. Next up, we can have a look at Mashawa for Roger Varian and Jim Crowley riding on this occasion. So this was a good performance at York. This was over mile 6 when finishing second.
This was the Melrose, Tom.
Was it? It wasn't just any performance, was it? This is your favourite ever race.
This is the Melrose, yeah.
Was it the trip that beat him here?
No, I don't think so. I think a better handicap, more progressive horse beat him. The two of them had met each other at Doncaster early in the season, and he had actually beaten Valley Forge on that occasion. Valley Forge just looks as though he's progressed further. Just look at the two of them. They're next to each other here, and how well they are going, and they go all the way to the line together. This was a deep Melrose. There were plenty of unexposed horses. The first and the second, I thought, came out with their reputations hugely enhanced. I suppose the question mark for Mashawa will be the course. This kind of track is a complete unknown. He's a very smooth traveller. Is Newmarket going to suit him as much as York?
Yeah, I think York mile 6 compared to 1.5 miles Newmarket, if he's run that well there, there's no bad thing that he's run well there, but it would have to leave you with question marks, perhaps, as to whether it's going to suit.
Yeah, I think he's got the tactical speed. I'm not really worried about the drop in trip per se, just the combination of the two. Behind, you mentioned that True Courage and Martial Plan were well beaten. I see him as a superior horse to them, even though they've both run well since True Courage, when third, then promoted to second behind Chalkstream at Ascot, and Martial Plan, when just edged out of it at Yarmouth. I still feel that Mashawa is essentially the classier horse.
Boltaway has no concerns over the track at all, because the winner over course and distance when last seen, albeit in a 6-runner field in comparison to a slightly bigger field here.
Yes, and this was a weird race. It was one of the weirder races over the 3 days at the Cambridgeshire meeting. He was having to bounce back after a lesser performance on his previous start when he was beaten favourite. And here, as you say, he's proved that he handles the track. It's a nice defeat of Lexington Knight. Further back is Tribal Art, who really didn't seem to handle the track. You can see him there on the left-hand side on this day. He really did seem to have an issue with the dip. Maybe softer ground might help that, but again, I'd be a little bit worried. The thing for Boltaway, I think, is he's going up the handicap, progressing all the time, but this is a lot lot deeper. You've just seen the Melrose. That was a very competitive race. The horse we're going to look at next has been running in very competitive 3-year-old races all season. I feel that Bolterway has just been moving his way upwards sort of more steadily than that.
And Siscani, the horse, as you say, we're going to look at next, has been gelded.
Yes, yeah.
Which, I mean, he's not had a terrible season by any stretch, but clearly they think there's more to come with the removal of, yes. I don't know where I'm going with that.
I was just
letting
you keep going.
Just dig a big hole for myself, yeah. But they clearly think that, this is going to be the making of him. Because you wouldn't look at his... I know he was beaten last time.
They've got a lot of horses, haven't they? And they're not afraid to reach for the gelding operation to make sure that a horse is training more straightforwardly and maybe able to achieve more in that way. I mean, this is Nagano sweeping past him. He tries all the way to the line. He's a more straightforward, malleable, ready horse than Nagano. The two of them come a long way clear. This is a very, very deep race, and we haven't seen him since. Prior to that, he ran really well in the King George V handicap at Royal Ascot when he had a slightly wide trip. The ground, a little bit of cut, I think is a positive for him. 1.5 miles will suit him. He'll be able to hold a really good track position. I think he's going to be really hard to knock out of the frame. And interestingly, I think this race, it doesn't strike me as being as deep as last year's race, for example. And so I am actually drawn more towards the front of the market in it, whereas in previous seasons that hasn't so much been the case.
Kingbrook won it last year. Truchan won it the year before that.
Absolutely.
Most likely winner?
I think it's Siscani.
Okay.
I just think everything he has been in these really competitive handicaps all season. The ground is right. The track will suit. And I think he's going to be very difficult to get away with. I fear Injazati the most, but the market tells you that. Yes,
well, there you go. Yeah, so top two in the betting, but Siscani is the one who you think is moving forward and has been gelded as well. Good stuff. That's the easy ones done, the handicaps.
Down towards the final 5 furlongs now of the Cesarewitch, with the runners still plenty closely grouped together, with Bardolph, the leader. Odla Bell is coming again, far out, and Welshman still there. Only just over half a mile to go, and it's now back to Graham.
And Muse isn't that far away either. Vintage Crop, that's a horse with a noseband, getting significantly closer, really having to stay on now. Bardolph going for home. Ordla Bell, Farrat in the grey colours on the far side. Specificity in the blue cap comes with a run, Drattit. And then behind these comes the Vintage Crop ridden along, and they've come past the 3. And as they race down past the bushes, it's Ordla Bell and Farrat and Specificity. And then comes Vintage Crop with just in behind these Bardolph. Coleridge in the orange cap starts to pick up. Supreme Choice with a runner. Say lads behind these. Quick Wenson won't be winning, but it's the favourite Vintage Crop going into the lead as they go past the furlong marker, and the favourite's going to win this in no uncertain fashion, going 4, 5, 6 clear up towards the line. They're strung out a furlong between first and last, and it's Vintage Crop for Ireland lands a massive gamble, and Vintage Crop takes it from Specificity in second. Farrat was third, Coleridge 4, Smiling at Strangers 5, then came Bardolph followed by Jack Buttons and Ordla Bell.
Right, Fran and I are going to turn our attention to some sprinters now in the form of the 5 furlong Newmarket Academy Godolphin Beacon Project Cornwallis Stakes Group 3. This is the 150. Here are the prices for the Declarations Hierarchy: Oisin Murphy 5-2, Twilight, Jet Li Roach, the Irish Raider 4-1, Gilded, Tardis, Manakan, Mitbahi, Papa Don't Preach, Illustrating, Nymphadora, and then we get into the 20-1 shots and bigger prices. We've got a field of 13 going forward here. I think it's going to be interesting exactly where they race, given that the rails will certainly come into consideration, even though that the stalls are in the centre of the track. Fran, we can start with Hierarchy, finishing second at Newbury. Manakan was also in this contest. The race was won by Wings of War. Hierarchy is now dropping back in trip from the 6 furlongs, where he had showed a good deal of speed, Fran.
Yeah, and a really interesting move, and I can definitely see why connections are dropping him down a furlong and trip based on what we've seen here in the Military Stakes. Hierarchy was just behind Wings of Eagles at Kempton in the Slaria Stakes, and on this day, without the benefit of a bend or cover, he just done plenty too much too soon into the race, but he opened up clear lead on his rivals going inside the final 2 furlongs. same exertions though, Tom, as you can see, he paid a price for that inside the last half furlong, just tying up a little bit. Wings of War in full flow, finished strongly under Adam Kirby to get up, and given the speed in which Hierarchy showed, I think dropping down to 5 furlongs will really play to his strengths, and time might tell, at least based on the Newbury evidence and also the Kempton evidence, where they went steady and he was able to make up ground from the rear, that 5 furlongs could well be his best trip.
Do you think he'll have the pace, Fran, to go forward over the 5? And out of 13, do you think Oisin Murphy will try and get to the standside rail?
Yeah, it's very, very possible. Oisin is, he's going to have the benefit of only looking at one race prior to the Cornwallis, but stalled 13, depending on how far they're going to be from that standside rail. But I'd be making a gradual move towards it if possible. And I think the pace of a 5 furlong race will just suit him better. He won't be over raced and he should be in his rhythm. And if one or two are going off too quick, I don't think Oisin will be too bothered. I think he'd be happy to get a lead into the race also if needs be.
I think if he does want to lead, knowing Oisin how he rides this track, I think it would be no surprise were he to end up the standside rail. But we'll see. Twilight Jet, Lee Roach for Michael O'Callaghan, who was last seen in the Middle Park just 13 days ago. From the start of the race, Fran, we're highlighting Twilight Jet here. What is it that you think makes him most interesting?
It's the gate speed. Now, he's drawn and stalled 2, and he may well have had the benefit of the standside draw, of course, in the Middle Park, but it's just that natural pace, Tom, that he showed out of the gates against Group 1 horses, the way he jumped, travelled strongly through the bridle. And if you stop the video in the dip, a furlong and a half from the finish, I was looking at live on the day, and I was beginning to give Lee Roach a good cheer home, because I thought he had his rivals all at it. Them exertions did pay off, did take its toll inside the last furlong against the hill, but that speed, if it wasn't a freak run, and I don't think it was, because he was a very good winner on a flat 5 at Tipperary early in the season. They've experimented with 7 furlongs. He didn't run too badly at Doncaster. He's ran well in Gimcrack at 6 furlongs, but just based on what we've seen in Newmarket the last day in the Middle Park, I think drop to 5 is a very good move if a busy season and a 13-day turnaround, having to travel back to Ireland, and also he doesn't have the benefit perhaps of a good draw on this occasion, but the trip is a good fit for him based on what we've seen at Newmarket.
Yeah, he is drawn in 2. Traditionally at this meeting we have seen when the stalls have been far side, being up against the far side rail has been no bad thing. Interesting to see what Lee Roach does. The race before that, Middle Part, was the Cheveley part. When we were last at the track for the juveniles, and Gilded and Illustrating both came out of that race. It was Gilded who had not gone forward, but was certainly positioned ahead of Illustrating, and we know that Tenebrae came up the standside rail from behind both of them. Who do you think will come out on top between Illustrating and Gilded here, Fran?
Gilded, Gilded definitely had the benefit of getting a good toe into the race off floaters towards the stand side of the race. I think that really just allowed her to maybe run above herself on the day, Tom. Now, it was a great run to be 4th, but she got a good slipstream off floaters into the race, and with the benefit of the best part of the track, I do think Illustrating dropping back down to 5 furlongs is most interesting. I was hoping for more rain for Illustrating. I thought in Goodwood, when it was soft ground, she was electric. She had a great cruising speed on soft ground. Trip will be fine for her. She's run very well at Longchamp, but the slower the ground, the more effective Illustrating will be. But for me, Illustrating is the one that can definitely overturn form with Gilded.
I suppose what's interesting about the race, we've got 13 runners, only 6 of them had their last start over the same trip as this, and most of those prominent in the betting are dropping back in trip. Who do you like?
I'm going to give a mention to Tardis, number 13. I think it's really interesting. Very good winner, listed company when getting up late in Newbury 2 starts ago, Tom. Have a look at the race in Salisbury if anyone has a chance before tomorrow, before Friday's action. Had no luck in running in the Dick Pool at Salisbury, where everything went wrong. She was too keen down the hill, got badly checked once or twice in a messy race, and was only beaten 3.5 lengths. Just think back down to the minimum trip, and the fact she's going into the race fresher than most of her rivals, I think, is a big plus. And by time test, who's been a bit of a revelation at stud so far, and he could well be an improver.
TARDIS, the amount of James Doyle for Michael Bell, around about a 9-1 shot at the moment. Lovely stuff, Fran. Thanks very much. Right, we're moving on to the stayers. Well, this is a 10 furlong contest, the Zetland, but is often, Lydia, won by a horse who goes on to perform over staying trips.
Yeah, a mile and a half or further. It can be a breeding ground for that. It was upgraded to Group 3 as part of the international European programme to try and boost staying contests across the continent.
Absolutely. Right, let's have a look at those who are lining up. Berkshire Rebel, Bluegrass, Jukebox, Foden, Four Shades of Silver, Goldspur, Harfit, Night Rider and Unconquerable. We're going to start with Harfit, who won on debut at Newmarket and subsequently was beaten on quicker ground at Haydog in listed company. What was to blame for your mind here for not being successful?
The quicker ground bit, I think, could well have been pertinent. If you look at the way that he's moving up to try and challenge triple time, he never quite manages to land a blow, never quite manages to get on terms. And you can see that he starts to roll and hang his way to the left. He's got Jukebox behind him. That horse isn't really able to get involved. And it does cross your mind that maybe Harfit might be able to achieve more if he was facing a better ground that was more suitable to him.
Yeah, as in slightly easier ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And you know, you would think that 10 furlongs should ultimately suit. You know, it's the kind of horse that you could see sticking to a mile, maybe in a different stable for the rest of the season.
Yes.
Nonetheless, 10 furlongs ultimately, according to his pedigree, should be within his compass.
And I think you could probably say the same about Goldspur, who won on debut at Sandown on soft ground. He was very much the pick of the paddock on the day. Remember that much. And I mean, he was pretty comfortable to success. Pretty much everything on the day wanted to keep off the rail, I think. So, and for the most part, they all did here, and he powered clear.
Yeah, very, very impressively in the end. This was with plenty of cut in the ground. He's 6.5 lengths clear at the line. Went slightly to his left at the start, but otherwise was pretty straightforward in the race. And I was looking back particularly at how he was in the stalls. I don't know whether you remember anything from that, because he went on to Epsom and he was withdrawn because he got upset in the stalls. So the question mark for him is whether mentally he is going the right way after that blip at Epsom.
There was nothing nothing concerning about him, his demeanour or anything. I remember, I think I was with Steve Mellish that day. He was pick of the paddock. He was very much team obvious on the day. And he won easy as you like. And James Doyle had said afterwards, he'll learn a bundle for that and will probably want to step up in trip. But yes, it didn't go to plan last time.
Well, you'd be very confident that he would. I mean, he saw how strongly he saw out a mile with a rising finish with cut in the ground.
Yeah.
You'd be very, very confident that he'll relish the 10, even at this stage in his career.
He does seem the second pick on jockey booking.
He does, with James Doyle on him.
Yes. Unconquerable for Donnachar O'Brien lines up. Now, he is experienced.
He is a very experienced horse, and this horse is very interesting, I think, because he was running here having returned from a break, and the time before he travelled very smoothly into the race and then sort of hung to his left and didn't really go through with his effort. He was wearing cheek pieces then. They took the cheek pieces off and put a tongue tie on here. He retains that on Saturday, and just look at the way he is in the closing stages. He's sort of marooned on the outside. He can't really get into the race. Obviously he can't match Caribus's speed, none of them could, but he's sticking to his task all the time. And if you look at his pedigree, there's a huge amount of stamina on the dam side, and this is the kind of horse that you would think is definitely going to enjoy the step up to 10 furlongs and is going to be a thorough stayer as a 3-year-old.
How could you make us watch that again?
The Caribus. You were just watching Caribus. You meant to watch it.
I completely forgot to watch. Anyway, I genuinely did.
I know, I could see it.
Yes, and now amazing that really he'd had 5 starts in 9 weeks before that break.
Yeah.
Before that return from the break.
I really like that performance.
Okay.
And he looked a lot more straightforward as well. The tone tie maybe has really helped him. Maybe the break has helped him. I think the trip is very much going to help him.
We don't have an accurate market at this stage. Who would you put right at the top of the betting?
Well, I would be interested in Unconquerable. I'm not expecting him to be favourite. And so that's the horse I'd be interested in, I think.
The fact that he's had lots of starts will dictate he isn't going to be at the top of the betting.
Well,
anyway.
I mean, his dad did it with the Oaks winner and the Musadora winner last season, didn't he? And the 1,000 Guineas winner. Maybe Donnachar's doing the same thing.
Maybe. There you go. That's a look at the Zetland.
between the 3 and 2 poles, and out in Yorkshire in the dark blue and white comes to join Raneen. On the left, Mise en Scene making very good progress to come and join these. Lady Valentine behind these, and Ribaldry, and behind those Mundana Lily out of Yorkshire is battling on really strongly. Mise en Scene nearest to us has just headed her though as they come to the furlong pole. Behind those Ribaldry in the white and green running on, but it's Mise en Scene now about 2 lengths ahead and is going to make a winning debut. Mise en Scene and Ashim Murphy straight clear in the closing stages. Ribaldry second, Raneen in third place.
Take me back to her debut at Haydock. She was really well found in the market. Were you expecting as such?
Yes, we were. I was expecting her to run well. I would never be a trainer that would be one to have a feeler, as it were, on the gallops here. You know, I don't put the gun to a horse's head at home. I'm more interested in them going and learning on the racetrack. I think that's really important. And, you know, she'd done everything nicely. O'Sheen had been in, you know, and sat on her. And, you know, when he gets off one and says, I really like this filly, you know, it does fill you with confidence, because although we've got plenty of fantastic riders here at home at the yard, and you see her going through her routine, you know, when the champion jockey who will be riding her in the races says, you know, I like this filly, you know, it makes you think, you know, we might be right here. And, you know, obviously you don't go to the races saying, you know, we will win. You go to the races saying, I hope she wins. And, you know, obviously that race at Haydock worked out very well, and she got a very smooth ride through and learnt a lot early. You know, you could still see she was a little bit green. But no, it's to have a filly like that, who, you know, it's in only our second season, it's very exciting, but also you need to, like I said, you need to relax. And, you know, I can't express my gratitude for Sheikh Fahad and the whole of the Qatar team for putting their faith in me at such a young stage in my career. And, you know, we just, you know, I'm confident, and I'm 100% going to do whatever's right and make sure that we can get her there on the day and make sure she's in tip-top form.
As you intimated there, plenty to work on from Haydock to Goodwood. Did you see a big change in her between those two races, or was it she's still learning the ropes, and she was taking on group company for the first time, but it really did look like 7 was her minimum?
Yes, and we knew that before. We knew, you know, the toss-up that we all had was whether we wait for a mile or run her again over 7. And I think when everything happens that, you know, quickly over 7, I think sometimes for young horses they learn a bit more. And look, she'd quite evidently taken a step forward from Haydock. She had tightened up, and she was working nicely. And obviously Goodwood was extremely exciting. It was a very, very stiff competition, and a bit like the Haydock race, we weren't going there thinking we're going to win. We went there thinking, I hope she wins. And you know, she very much learnt early. She still hit a stage midway through the race that she just had to say, you know, come on now. And you know, and luckily she quickened away nicely. But like you said, it's, you know, we made the decision after Goodwood to not run her over 7 again, and she's ready to now go up to a mile. And, you know, if you look at her in the flesh, she's very much a horse for next year. So in my mind, whatever happens this year is a bonus.
Right, key races on the Friday for the juvenile fillies. First of all, the Phillies Mile. Let's have a look at some of the significant facts of the Bet365 Phillies Mile. It is over the mile, obviously, Group 1 for the juvenile fillies, established in 1973, granted Group 3 status 1975. It was promoted to a Group 2 in 1986 and to a Group 1 in 1990. It was originally held at Ascot, but was transferred permanently to Newmarket in 2011 when Champions Day was created. And where do they go next? Well, Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and 1,000 Guineas. Often the winner of this will cement herself at the top of the market for the 1,000 Guineas. Sometimes the favourite, and this is already favourite for the Guineas, as we have in this instance. The leading jockey, 6 wins, Frankie Dettori, 1990 to 2011 was his last win. Still riding. Leading trainer, 6 wins, Sir Henry Cecil, 1978 to 1996. Leading owner, 6 wins. Mrs. John Magnier and Michael Tabor, I suppose somewhat unsurprisingly. And the fastest winning time was Lyric of Light back in 2011. 1:35.98 was that time. Right, let's have a look at the current standings again. So at the moment you've got Native Trail, who won that National Stakes on September the 12th, is 1-2-2. These are the best European 2-year-old figures to date. Perfect Power, who won a couple of weeks ago, the middle part, 1-1-5. Same as Tenebrism, whose rating isn't, she's the best of the fillies, and subsequent rating not yet published, 1-1-5. That was in the Cheveley Park a couple of weeks ago. And then Atomic Force, 1-1-4, winning the Robert Papin. Angel Blue, the Lagardère last week, 1-1-3, and there's a host in at 1-1-3 as well. Best of the fillies is Tenebrism. Give you some more as well with Bayside Boy on 1-1-2. Castle Star winning the Middle Park, running in the Middle Park, 1-1-2. Other notable ones in there, Floaters as far as a filly goes, and Discoveries as well. Those part of a host in at 1-1-1. Right, let's have a look at the Phillies Mile then. As far as the betting goes, well, I mentioned that. We've got right at the top of the betting, probably the best filly we've seen so far this year for some people, even though what I've just showed you on that graphic would indicate otherwise. She's certainly the most exciting, and Inspiral heads the betting for the Kipco 1000 Guineas next year. Phillies Mile looks like this currently. 8-11. Mise en Scène is 11-2. Concert Hall 6-1. Magical Lagoon for Jessica Harrington, won in Group 3 company last time, is 7-1. Wild Beauty, William Buick, 11-1. 12-1. Majestic Glory 20s, and bigger the final trio. 8-11 then, Fran. Inspiral, who was last seen defeating Wild Beauty at Sandown. She's unbeaten so far. All of her runs have come on quick ground. How impressed have you been with her to date, Fran?
Tom, her debut run was quite taking at Newmarket. Now, she was very well backed on that occasion, and she looked, after a slow start, all in trouble. It was only inside the last half furlong that the penny began to drop, and a turn of foot she showed inside 100 yards to put a length and a half on the second, whose rate 85 was quite taking. And then she went to Sandown, of course, and bolted up in that Lister race, travelling really well into it from the outside. Wild Beauty reopposes back in second. She, of course, went on to win in Woodbine in a local Group 1 there. And it's just a manner in which she done it at Sandown that stamped her as a filly with immense potential. And, of course, she went to Doncaster, and it was very, very impressive in quick ground in the Mayhill in that Group 2 over the mile on the straight track there.
What would concern you with regard to her, I suppose, particularly 8-11, Fran?
I can't see any kinks in her, and I think Newmarket, the mile on softer ground, will be fine for her. John Gosden was quoted saying that the ground in Doncaster was as quick as she wanted. That was good to firm ground. She's going to get good to soft ground. It's very, very hard to pick holes in her, Tom. The way she goes through her races, it looks like Connections are pains to get her lead into her races, which she's learning on the job, but it's the way she powers into a race with the 3 to the 2, and it looks like she's galloping all over her rivals. It really stamps her as a good filly. Her dam Starscope is second in the Coronation on soft ground. It's very hard to pick any negatives to her.
She will come out of stall 8 of 9. Concert Hall is the leading Irish challenger at the market currently for Aidan O'Brien and for Ryan Moore. Last seen winning the Well Path Stakes. This was over the 7 furlongs. I suppose the key question mark is her stepping up to a mile, Fran.
She will be far better than a mile, Tom, no doubt. What she done on her last run, the way she finished from the middle of the track to reverse form with Sunset Shiraz in the Well Stakes, I thought was a huge effort. Typical Aidan O'Brien 2-year-old filly. She's having her 6th start on Friday, and she only looks to be getting the hang of things. She was a very good winner, battling on well on her 2nd start over 7 furlongs to Curra. Got lost once or twice in between times, so really bounced back to form. And I think put another furlong on her, she'll only be better. Her dam was a winner of the Oaks course in 2012, and it's an interesting mix, of course. A couple of these Ballydoyle fillies being by Dubawi, and I think Concert Hall, I think a mile will really see her the best on Saturday, and she could be peaking at the right time.
Dubawi filly out of a Galileo mare. Mise en Scène was the winner of the Prestige last time. First win in Group 3 company for trainer James Ferguson. Sheen Murphy back on board. Another one stepping up to a mile. She's a daughter of Siuni, Fran.
Yeah, and a very good performance to win in Goodwood. Tom travelled a little bit keen initially. He was down the inside in Goodwood, and the eventual second, Danier, made a move to quicken up and got a couple lengths in the field. Oisin Murphy had to sit, switch around the field, and he had a couple lengths to make up. And I thought it was to Michelle Zen's credit that she could make up that ground and get there, and she was very strong at the line. A very good winner on debut at Haydock as well in July, and you love her rate of progression. She would learn plenty in Goodwood, and it's really interesting being set by Siuni out Galileo Mare a mile. If she relaxes, it should suit her very well.
Yeah, she sees this out very well at Goodwood over the 7, as we're watching her just hit the line now and hit the line very hard as well. Magical Lagoon, Fran, is the joint most likely race with Mise en Scène. 2 starts so far, winning in Group 3 company when last seen. I suppose interesting, we didn't see her until the 2nd of August, though I believe she did have a barrier trial. What do you make of Magical Lagoon?
Shaped really well on debut in Naas, looked quite green on that occasion. Albula, who won that race, reopposed in this Group 3 at the Curragh, and Albula might have just done a little bit too much too soon, taking it up quite early, was there to be shot at. But that said, Tom, Magical Lagoon had to chase her down, and she was a very good winner at the line. What a August and September for Jessica Harrington. I think she had 30 winners in September, and Magical Lagoon, being by Galileo, she's found a family of novelists and a real good staying pedigree that should get better in time with age. She's very, very interesting. Now, Albula is second let down to form, but she ran much too bad to be true when last seen. So, for me, given the stable form and the breeding, she's of definite interest of the bigger priced horses.
Yeah, even watching that back there, Fran, she was never winning it. And then all of a sudden, last furlong, nothing else was winning it. She absolutely took off. Does she need to be more streetwise, do you think, to be competitive here?
I think so, Tom. I think switching to the track, the undulations of the Rolling Mile, and I think she was very suited to be ridden on the day like she was. She's ridden cold. She was ridden with education in mind to finish off a race to her best effect, and she duly did, and she landed there and won. She'll have learned plenty, but she never really got in amongst horses, nor so at Naas, so it is going to be a bit of a culture shock, but I do like the way she's progression. She could be the filly for next year, that the lack of experience might just find her out a little bit on Friday.
I'm going to read between the lines and say that you think Inspirer is going to be very tough to beat based on what you said. So a last line on her, and who is her biggest danger for you?
Look, the Phillies Mile last 2 years, Quadrilateral and Pretty Gorgeous, have let it down a little bit. They too looked superstars in some regards, but I think Inspiral has the potential to be in that bracket, and I do think Concert Hall stepping up to a mile will keep her very honest.
We're going to go back a couple of races and look at the Oh So Sharp, the 225. It's the Godolphin Lifetime Care Oh So Sharp Stakes, Group 3 for the fillies over 7 furlongs. Pearl Glory is 5-2 with Betfair. Good American 11-4. Gifted Gold 9-1. Rich's Bar is 9-1, 10-1, and bigger the rest. We can start though with the filly that's second in the betting there, which is Good American, who won on debut at Salisbury, beat Aunt Bethany. This was on quick ground. She's tackling a similar trip here, and it's clear that she's pretty highly regarded. She went off at 11-2, but post-race comments were from Rafe Beckett were pretty glowing, Fran.
Yeah, and why not, Tom? A very good performance. She jumped, seemed to be very streetwise and made all, and kept on well despite drifting out a little bit into the middle of the track. Can be quite an intimidating spot at Salisbury with crowds on the inside and outside for horses on their debut, and I thought she done very, very well. Interestingly, Aunt Bethany and Persist, the second and third, they both travelled up to Newcastle, and Aunt Bethany confirmed form with Persist at Newcastle, and I think Good American has all the potential in the world to improve off it. Whether she learned a lot on debut is debatable, but you couldn't knock the performance.
How do you assess a filly or any juvenile coming here on just second start? Does it take a specific type, do you think, to be able to handle that?
It does. She's obviously very, very forward-going. I do like the Sire American Pharaoh. I think she will get better with time. Just lack of being streetwise on this track, particularly if there's a rush across to the stand side to get to the railing. It can also get messy, And if she's a little bit green with a horse around her or ends up in front doing a little bit too much too soon up in grade, it might well be her undoing. Interesting to see Frankie the Tory booked to ride, big winner for the stable in France last Sunday. And she is the one that, you can see the potential in, just whether she's quite ready for it. To be interested to see how she copes with getting it back in the pack potentially, or maybe riding her a bit differently up in class.
Pearl Glory is stepping up in trip off the back of the Dick Pool last time. Now, on this occasion, she finished ahead of Perfect News, and she also finished ahead of Misty Air. Was there a benefit to racing towards the far side, Fran? Would you forgive some of those who perhaps raced a little bit out towards the centre of the track as the race unfolded?
Yeah, to a point. We also gave a mention to Tardis to beat the favourite, who runs in the Cornwallis early on, isn't it? But Pearl Glory, I think, to be fair, finished off well. The winner got a great run down the far rail, Romantic Time, winning at a big price. For me, Tom, Pearl Glory stepping off the trip looks interesting up a furlong, but there was a hint that there were 4 or 5 horses on top of each other. She was the one that had to work hardest to get into the mix and did finish off well. Jury's out for me and her a little bit up in trip. I'd like to see a little bit more for all that she was a decent winner on her 2 prior starts, but going up another furlong in trip, I don't know if she's going to be as strong as some of these.
God, watching that TARDIS run back, Fran, I might be sold. I tell you.
It's quite eye-catching, isn't it?
No luck whatsoever. Right, Perfect News we saw there, who ran out towards the centre of the track, and Tom Marquand was back on board for her to win back down in grade in a Phillies handicap last time. So she is stepping back up in grade. What she proved here was 7 furlongs was no problem, Fran.
And was better for it. I know she was in a nursery, Tom, but I was very taken by this. And if you subscribe to the theory that the far side of the track was the place to be in Salisbury, you can probably forgive Perfect News' run on that day to some extent. And I thought stepping up a furlong and trip, she was very good in Newmarket. William Haggis' team, as we know, could not be going any better. 5 winners one Saturday, 8 the next. And I thought, just loved the way this filly fought on and battled on well and was strong at the line in the last 50 yards at Newmarket, finding plenty for pressure. Yes, she's got to step up, but the fact she wasn't beaten too far when track conditions might have been against her in Salisbury would suggest that she's right in the mix with her 2 rivals at the head of the market.
She's drawn 1 on this occasion, so on a wing of the 9 over the far side in the centre of the track. Who do you like here, Fran, at the prices?
I think Perfect News is very, very interesting for a stable going well. Good American, very interested to see her back out in the track. Lack of experience and being battle hardness, I think could count against her on Friday. She could well be the best filly in time, but Perfect News for me, given how well she performed over this track and trip, is the one I'd like to be on.
Fran, lovely stuff as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks to everyone at home for watching. That is it as far as the knowledge goes for Dubai Future Champions Festival. Next week, join us for Kipco British Champions Day under the microscope in the knowledge. Bye-bye.